Hey guys, Michael Skelton here, here to talk to you about Turo and how I got started. I got started with Turo about 5 months ago. I had no idea what it was previously. I had never rented on the platform. I had never rented my car on the platform. And so, I always just thought like rental cars were expensive and kind of impractical. I had a friend coming down to visit me in Austin, Texas, and I was like, hey man, like if you're gonna fly in, during the week, like I'm working so we can go out at night, and we can go out on the weekend, but I'm gonna be busy for my 9-to-5 job. And he said, well, I'll just get a Turo car. And I said, well, what's that? And he's like, well, rental car, but like you don't rent it from, like Hertz or, a Vail or something like that. You actually rent it from like a person, like you rent somebody's car. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I was like, so people just rent their cars on this app? Yes. And I was like, okay, cool. So I actually ended up dropping him off at the car. And I saw just how easy it was. He didn't even interact with the person, contactless during COVID, makes it nice and easy, safe. And I thought it was interesting. At the time, I had a Model 3 Tesla, and so I was like, oh, I wonder what these go for. We looked it up on the app. It went for like over $100 a day. I couldn't believe that. I work from home, so I figured, what the heck? I'll throw it up for on Turo and see if I get any bookings. Put it up on Turo. About 2 hours later, I had a $300 booking. It was unbelievable to me. So that's how I got started. And from there, I kept renting that car as often as I could whenever I didn't need it. If somebody was coming down to visit me or I wanted to go out, go to the grocery store, I had plans, I would obviously mark it as unavailable. But yeah, I just started renting it, and very quickly, like I swelled up to like $1,000 a month. And it was basically paying for the car bill, paying for the insurance. I was getting essentially a free Tesla for like 15 days a month. So now, flash forward about 5 months later, I've been on the Turo platform, adding cars left and right. I've achieved like all-star status host. I've rented the car over 80 different trips. What I did was I started to scale up very quickly because I realized like renting my primary car is a little bit inconvenient. So I figured, how could I, continue like my success on the Turo platform, but not have my car, booked every day so that I can't go anywhere. So it was a little bit of a trade-off for me. So what I did was I started adding cars to my fleet or platform. So what I did was I first added this Model 3, and then right after that I added this Alfa Romeo. And I actually added these up in Boston, which was interesting because I learned a little bit about what it's like to operate in two different markets of Turo. I found out that Boston actually has higher prices for the same exact car, which is pretty cool. And I was coming up here to visit my family and my girlfriend, so I was coming up here a bunch. I needed methods of transportation, and obviously once I learned that like the market is substantially better in Boston, I leaned into it a little bit harder. So at this point, I have 3 cars on the platform. I'm about to have a 4th. I ordered a Model Y as soon as I saw what the Boston market was like. So I have a Model Y coming in next week, just in time for Thanksgiving. Super excited for that, but it's going to be interesting to see sort of how much saturation goes into the Turo platform, and see sort of if there's a decline or if sort of the demand is kind of untapped and I can just continue adding cars. All right, so now I've got 3, about to be 4 cars on the platform. What I'm looking to do, what I've learned, Teslas are by far the best vehicle to rent on Turo. It makes it super, super easy. With them being sort of EV and hooked up to software and whatnot, they require a lot less maintenance, and they also are really easy to sort of track different things like how often your guest is refueling, or sort of where they're going, if they were to be late returning the car or something, or if you just need to help them out. You can if they get locked out, you can unlock from your phone. I mean, you can do a bunch of other crazy things with the settings to help them out throughout their trip if they're struggling to drive the vehicle for any reason. So it's really cool. I would definitely lean into EVs if you're starting on the platform. I'm definitely leaning into EVs, especially Teslas, for now, as I expand my fleet. So next year, in addition to the Model Y that I'm getting up in Boston, I'm also going to be getting a Model Y down in Austin, and I'm also going to be getting another Model 3 down in Austin, and seeing what the saturation is like. So one of the most common questions that I get when people ask me about Turo is like, how much money can I make? Obviously, that is like the #1 thing that you want to know before you invest in something. And so at this point, I've experimented a lot. I've been in, 2 different states. I've had like 2 very different cars, and I've sort of figured out really what's super profitable and what's kind of barely profitable. This is a great investment, Model 3, for all of the reasons, including like why Teslas are so cool. People pay good money for them, and as a host, it's not just about how much money you can command, but also sort of how much control you have. And I can always see, if I need to, where the vehicle is. I can help, guests a lot and improve their experience by like sort of opening, a car door, or, being able to check and see where they are in relation to a supercharger and suggest something that way. You have a lot of control when you're sort of connected to the car, as well as the car requires less maintenance and commands a higher price point, right? So this car will earn me probably between $1,800 and $2,100 a month. The car payment is about $800 and the insurance is about $100. So it's about $1,000 of profit. So I would definitely recommend Model 3. Not so much for the Alfa Romeo. As much as I love it, I got it because I just wanted it. And I figured, renting it on a Turo would sort of subsidize the car payments. I was spot on with that. So if you're looking for sort of a part-time cool vehicle to have, the Alfa Romeo would check the box for that. However, it does not command as high of a price point, right? So where this will be rented out anywhere from $100 to $130 a day, this one's going to be rented out between $70 and $90, right? So dramatic difference there. The car payment's very similar. So car payment is, $800, $825-ish. And, it's also, it doesn't have that connectivity. I can't offer as good of a host experience for the guest. Should they lock themselves out, I can't really help with that for remotely. And, it does require a decent amount of maintenance. So this car yields me about $800 to $900 a month. Obviously it varies a little bit based on, like, in the summer I might be able to get up to like $1,100, but it's not a profit machine like the Model 3 is. So looking forward, like, I have, multiple cars on the platform. There's sort of some challenges to scaling. There's also some really exciting things with scaling. Obviously, if you're adding a car that's generating, $500 to $1,000 of profit per month, that's great. The more you scale that, the less you're reliant on a full-time job or other investments in the stock market or crypto or real estate. But there are obviously challenges. A big one, obviously, it's a physical machine, so parking is a big one. Also demand and saturation in your market. Like, if you add 10 Model 3s, well, then you can't command as high of a price point as if you had one Model 3 in a market. As Turo develops, like, hopefully the amount of renters scales with the amount of people that are offering their vehicles, right? But just from my experience, like, I'm adding vehicles left and right. And so you can kind of get into a situation where if the platform rent-wise doesn't scale quite as fast, you might run into an issue where you start cannibalizing your own prices. But I think it's still a great platform to invest in. Turo's been around for many, many years. I know hosts that have been hosting for 5 or 6 years that have thousands of trips. And I think that as people sort of adapt to this like sharing economy with Airbnb and a bunch of other things like the Neighbor app and whatnot, the people are getting more comfortable renting from people, and I think a lot of folks actually prefer it rather than renting from these big companies. So even as like Hertz adds all these Teslas and all these car companies sort of command a lot of real estate like at the airport and whatnot, I still think that Turo has a lot of room to grow, and especially because a lot of the guests that I talk to talk about how much less expensive and more convenient it is than actually going through a big rental car company. So I'm looking at sort of expanding my fleet in an intelligent way. The Alpha, probably not going to scale to 10 Alphas, but I could see myself scaling to Teslas or something else that has the same connectivity and sort of low maintenance. I got my eyes on like Rivian and a lot of the other EV players. If they come down a little bit in price point, I'd be willing to sort of get a car and offer that as an experience, which I think is great because, right now, like, a lot of people are getting Teslas. It's becoming more commonplace, to have an experience driving one. But something like a Rivian, like, you don't see those on the road. You don't really know what it's like to drive one. Maybe you're considering buying one. I've had a lot of people rent my Tesla when they're considering, getting a Tesla. just to take it for an extended test drive. And so I think that that's going to be really popular. One of the things I'm most excited for next year is I have placed an order for the Cybertruck, and so I'm really excited to like give people the opportunity to drive a Cybertruck without having to, fork out the 50 grand to actually purchase one for themselves. That's a really cool thing about Turo. So part of the reason why I like Turo, aside from it obviously generating me money and giving me sort of these cool cars, is the lifestyle like it allows me to live, which, when I had one car on the platform, I didn't really get, but now I do. Having multiple cars on the platform, been doing this for, several months. So I like to split time between Boston, Massachusetts, and Austin, Texas. I love Austin, Texas. I would live there year round if it were up to me. But my family and my girlfriend still live up in Boston, Massachusetts. So doing a long distance relationship is obviously hard. I want to come up and visit them as often as possible. When I'm in both places, I need a method of transportation. And so, going back and forth, you really can, put a car on Turo in Boston, put a car in Turo in Texas, which I've done, and be able to have a vehicle whenever I need it in both places. And when I don't need it, rent it out, So as long as you have like parking and you're, near, some big landmark like a stadium or a typical like tourist area, a national park, or, in my opinion, like airport is the best, you're gonna be good to go. And it's gonna allow you to live like a crazy cool lifestyle, because the other thing about Turo is like any car that you want, as long as it's listed on Turo, in the makes and models, and there seems to be like sufficient demand for it, like you can just pretty much get that car, finance it, and rent it out, half the time or 3/4 of the time or a quarter of the time in some cases, and then basically get your dream car paid for you for free and get to enjoy it. I mean, this is what I did with the Alpha. The Alpha wasn't a great investment in terms of profitability, but it does pay for itself. And I get to drive an Alfa Romeo whenever I want. So there's huge benefits to like just the lifestyle, in addition to, making a bunch of money with Turo. So one of the questions that I get asked is sort of, how does Turo compare to real estate? Because obviously like real estate is seen as like this great investment vehicle, and it is. Like, I don't want to discourage anybody from that, but I would definitely encourage them to check out Turo as well. I've been a real estate investor. I am a real estate investor right now. And I've also been a Turo investor, and I am right now. Basically, like, Turo wins out in my book, right? So from a pure money perspective, right? Depending on the lifestyle that you want to live and how, what kind of responsibilities you want, that could vary. But I think that, in terms of like starting a rental car business on Turo versus, starting a, sort of a real estate business, whether it be through Airbnb or long-term leases, like, Turo is the better option, and it's a pure money perspective. So the cost to entry is much lower. In order to get like a real estate property, depending on, the home value or the duplex or condo value, like you need to fork up a lot of cash. So you need to put in like sometimes, 40, 50, 60, $1,000 on a house, that might be worth $300,000, right? So you're already having to sink in like 20% of the value of the home in order to just get started. And that might net you, I don't know, $1,000, $1,500, right? Like, that's sort of the optimal case, right? Depending on what you get in terms of the home value and the mortgage. In my case, like, what I've pretty much been able to do with my real estate investments is like about $1,000 per month. So let's just round to $1,000 a month, right? And so you need, say, 50K to start, right? $250,000 home. You have to put 20% in for it to qualify as a real estate investment that you're not going to live in. So, okay, 50K, $1,000 output per month, right? With Turo, you don't really need that much money to get started because you can finance a car. So if you finance a car, for example, like for this car, I put in $2,500, right? So that's already multiples lower than you're going to invest into real estate. And this car generates me about $1,000 per month. So, I mean, you just look at the cost to entry, and, this allows, Turo allows for sort of young people to become investors, right? And get equity in an asset that, if you choose the right car, is appreciating or at least maintaining most of its value. So, you fork up the $2,500, you get $1,000 per month after, assuming that there's no, EV credits or anything else that you're getting off of the sort of the ticket price. in 2.5 months, you're already, break even. You could turn around and sell the car at any point. But if you continue to go through, for example, like these cars don't really lose value. So if you make a good investment, my plan is to have this car, pay for itself, and for 4 years generate me $1,000 a month. So 12 months, 4 years, 48 grand in profit, right? And then sort of to go through the process and see, like, should I keep it on the Turo platform or should I just turn around and sell it and get a new one, right? Because these cars don't really depreciate. They go for about like 40 to 45 grand. This will come down in sticker price to probably like 30 grand by the time I'm done, maybe 35 grand, depending on how good of a shape it's in and if I have to do any work to it or whatnot. But I mean, either way, you're putting in $2,500, you're spitting out over the course of 4 years about 48 grand, 45 grand, 50 grand, and then you're turning around and selling it for say 30 grand, right? Being very modest. So $2,500 investment over 4 or 5 years, you're making about 80 grand. That's pretty good, about 40x, right? With a real estate investment, like if you put, fork up the 50K and you get $1,000 per month. So yes, you put in 50K, you make 48 grand, after those 4 years, turn around and sell the home there. Even if it's appreciated, you're gonna get out that equity, but you're putting so much more money in and your multiple's probably like maybe, I don't know, 2-3x what you put in. So, and that's assuming that you're in a good market. I feel like starting a rental car business on Turo, so much better than real estate investing. So Turo is going to be probably good for just about anybody that gets involved, but it's going to be great if you're in certain scenarios. So if you're located near an airport, bingo. I mean, you're going to constantly have guests and customers coming in and out of your city. It's a great opportunity to set up a rental car business. Another couple of things that you need. So you definitely need parking. I mean, that's sort of a non-negotiable. You need some reliable amount of parking for your vehicle. Even if that varies from time to time, you just don't want to be paying an exorbitant amount. Otherwise, it's going to cut into your profit. And then if you can, installing sort of a lockbox on your porch or somewhere nearby your car, so that guests can kind of come and go and that you don't have to constantly be there handing off the keys. Otherwise, you can't live sort of the lifestyle that you want, and it's going to sort of cut into sort of your time, which can be as valuable or more valuable than the amount of money that you'll make on the platform. So those are some quick tips. I think there's a lot of other things too that I cover in my consulting packages, which are like how to manage your car through like CarSync, which is a car rental sort of platform that allows you to like integrate Turo and a bunch of other rental car platforms, which is great, and a bunch of other stuff that it takes a lot of time to go into and is sort of circumstantial for people depending on what market you're in, what car you have, what your goal is. Are you trying to enjoy a vehicle half the time and just get it paid for, or are you trying to really scale up a business and make thousands of dollars a month? So I cover all that in my Turo Tips blogs, and then a little bit deeper in the consulting, a little bit more personal. But yeah, so that's basically like some quick tips. And if you have anything, feel free to contact me and we can go through your unique scenario.